Welcome to our collection, which has been painstakingly picked for individuals who have missed some of our engaging videos. Without further ado, let's get started. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for serving my boyfriend's parents pizza for dinner? So, this happened last night. I'm still hella confused by the whole thing. So I, female 28, have been dating my boyfriend, male 31, for 7 months. His family are of Italian origins, and they take a lot of pride in it. They invited me over to their house several times. Last night, his parents came over to the apartment for the first time. They said they were visiting a friend and decided to stop by for dinner. I freaked out when they said dinner because it was late and I was working and had no time to cook, so I ordered pizza for all of us. The second his parents saw the pizza, they got ticked. His dad gave me a nasty stare, then said that I intentionally served them pizza because they were Italians. In other words, he claimed I was mocking them and their food and assuming that just because they're Italian, that they'd only eat Italian food, which he called racist. I was confused. I said I didn't think it was interpreted that way because he said, "If you have Asian guests over, do you serve them sushi? How would you like it if we only served you McDonald's and fries every time you visit, since that's what Americans eat?" I was stunned by his words. Basically, he was saying that just because they're Italian, then I shouldn't assume they'd like to have pizza, but who doesn't like pizza? He and my boyfriend's mom got up and said they wanted to leave. My boyfriend tried to get them to stay and take it easy, but they left eventually. He blew up, saying I messed up by serving them pizza and insulting them directly. He told me to call and apologize, but I said no, and that I didn't have time to cook anything after they showed up unexpectedly. He got more upset and asked if his parents needed permission to visit him. I backed off thinking he'd calm down, but he kept saying I insulted his parents and I needed to apologize. I'm utterly and genuinely confused. Am I the a-hole? Everyone's the a-hole. No communication. They sprung on her at the last minute that they were going to come over for dinner without asking if this person had enough time to fix something. She's an a-hole for not communicating and saying, hey, maybe I can order pizza. Is that okay? Maybe we could go out. Maybe there's something that they like. No one's communicating here. Everyone's the a-hole. Story 2. You're a capable young man, so I can grab whatever I want from your shopping cart. Details. I am 17 and live in the UK. This happened around December of last year. It happened in Little, to be exact. Now, this is going to be a very long read, so prepare. EM, entitled Mom. EK, entitled Kid. My mom asked me to go grocery shopping because she was quite busy with something, and I agreed to go, so I went to Little. I spent around 10 minutes looking for things on the shopping list. I decided to get a treat for myself because why not? And so I got some Fincare chocolate. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Note, this chocolate wasn't sold at the till in this location. I finally finished finding everything and made my way to the till. I was standing in line while using my phone, just minding my business, until this overly loud parent with her very hyperactive kid who looked around 8 came behind me in the line. EM. You wouldn't mind letting us go in front of you, would you? I looked down on her cart, which seemed to be a lot more full than mine, and I decided I'm not in a rush, so why not? And I replied, sure, and subtly smiled. She thanked me and went on to go in front of me. My impression of this woman seemed normal until this happened. The EK said as he was pointing to my cart, Mom, look, it's that chocolate that you promised to buy me next time we go shopping. EM. Oh, yes, darling, I just remembered. Then EM looked up to me and said, May I grab that chocolate bar? The little one's been eager to get it. Now, this chocolate is somewhat far from the tills in this location, and as mentioned earlier, Isn't sold at the tills either, so getting a new chocolate bar for myself would have been a chore. I replied, "I'm sorry, I don't think I can give you the chocolate. It's quite far from the tills." Her smile quickly turned into a death stare, and she said in a loud voice, "Right, I don't care how far this chocolate is from here. Now someone like you is more than capable of getting a new bar, so stop making George cross." I replied, "I don't care how capable I am. I'm not going anywhere, and this chocolate is staying in the cart." Now, there was a lot going through my head at this point, but I remember how the EK was reaching inside my cart trying to grab the chocolate, so I quickly grabbed it myself and held it in my hand. EK, "Mom, the guy took the chocolate." EM, "Right, I've had enough." The EM reached to my hand to grab the chocolate, but I moved in time and decided to go directly to the cashier and ask him to call a manager. Now the cashier seemed to have witnessed everything, and so he informed the manager about what happened. No more than 2 minutes of me awkwardly standing, and the manager arrives. She walks up to the EM and quietly asks her to leave, and the EM keeps trying to incriminate me somehow until she finally paid for her groceries and left. Me, the cashier, and the manager all had a laugh about it after she left. Now that I think about it, that scene wasn't worth a chocolate bar, but oh well. I mean, this person already let this mom and kid go in front of them in line. He wasn't being selfish in all regards. And the entitled mom asked for the chocolate, but why after that did she just grab it instead? It is entitled behavior. Maybe the guy could have gone on to get his own chocolate, seeing as he also let the mother and the kid in front. But, as he said, it was his choice. It was his chocolate bar. I don't think he's being a jerk at all. It was very polite until they decided to invade his space.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 3. The city wanted me to take better care of my gardens, so I had them checked by nature organization. The guys at Pro Revenge argued that it better belongs here, so here I am. My house is surrounded by 2 gardens, one in the front, facing the street, and one in the back, bordering my neighbor's gardens. When my parents and grandparents moved into our house 26 years ago, they planted a thick hedge around the entire property. They also installed a rose arch over the pathway to our front door, and my grandfather was always busy keeping up the garden, planting, weeding, keeping everything very tidy. My grandfather passed away in 2002, and after that, the garden was neglected for a few years as my parents were still working and my brother and I were in university and school. But then, in 2005, my mom read something that said we should plant stuff to help the bees, and she took over the gardens, planting lilacs, rhododendrons, roses, and various berries. Later, we decided to also install raised garden beds with various kitchen herbs. My mom is now over 70 years old, so she has officially given the house over to my brother and me, so that we won't be taxed on inheriting it when she passes on. Since then, I've been sporadically taking care of the gardens. I like them in their wild shape, with all the birds, bees, bumblebees, and butterflies flying around. In autumn, we get hedgehogs, and we've been visited by a fox recently, which sent my cats into a panic. Then recently, we received a letter from the city stating that our garden was interfering with the safety of the street because the hedge was overgrowing the pavement and contained poisonous berries which were a danger to children. Now, my brother trims the hedge every month to make sure nothing is overgrowing the pavement in any way, and while the berries are poisonous, to get to them, you'd have to be quite resilient because they're surrounded by thorns. They're also known to be ideal food for some local birds. So I contacted our local Nature Conservation Association and asked them if they would like to have a look at our gardens and maybe tell us if we could improve anything to make them even more nature-friendly. They came, looked around, and then told us they rarely see gardens so in touch with nature. They approved our gardens as especially nature-friendly and contacted the city to tell them that, from their point of view, any changes would be considered unfriendly to nature, and since our city prides itself with once being one of the green capitals in our country, they had to budge. Don't mess with my gardens. Just cover yourself. They were doing the upkeep. Maybe a little wilder, but they were keeping things trim. I think the city was just trying to get them to get rid of their hedges or cut them down a lot. I think they were just over what the city would have wanted, but they knew the letter of the law, these two people, and they kept their hedges within that range. And the city just failed spectacularly. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for rejecting my boyfriend's proposal because I'd lose my health insurance and alimony? I, 44 female, divorced my ex-husband, 47 male, 2 years ago, and have been dating my boyfriend, 45 male, since. No cheating. My ex and I were fighting a lot, but the divorce was less litigious than expected. My ex-husband, James, and I were married for 21 years. In the state of Massachusetts, I, as his ex-spouse, was able to stay on his group health insurance. In addition, the judge ordered that since I stayed home to raise our 4 kids, 21 male, 19 female, 18 male, 16 male, that I'd get alimony for life, or until only I, not my ex, remarried. In terms of health insurance, I'd lose it if either James or I remarried. However, James has been very open about the fact that he hates the idea of marriage or marrying again, even more than he hates me still being covered under his health insurance policy. His exact words were, "Well, lucky for you, it's not emotionally or financially cost-effective for me to marry just to get you off my health insurance." For the entire length of our marriage, part of the reason I didn't work is because my ex is a doctor, and after doing calculations, we realized I'd never make enough to even get close to covering the childcare costs of 4 kids. I checked and saw that if I had continued my administrative job, I'd be making $17 an hour today. I have no chance of making even that now. My boyfriend and I are very much in love. In many ways, I wish I met him first. He's empathetic, and unlike my ex, he values work-life balance, and instead of running between a private practice and the psych ward at a county hospital to work 24/7. However, my boyfriend and I don't live together, and besides small presents to each other, we pay for ourselves. Things were good, but my boyfriend changed after I had a pregnancy scare. He said that if I get pregnant again, he wants us to be living under one roof, and not like 2 divorced parents. So he proposed. I was upset, but had to turn it down because, love aside, this was my health insurance and only source of income on the line. I didn't understand why my boyfriend was so upset and didn't understand. He's a case manager at a nonprofit, and we'd be living on half the income I'm currently living on if we take out child support, and that's bound to create tension on both sides. Am I the a-hole? Just wanted to add, we cannot move in together either, as the archaic family court laws would see that and assume that my boyfriend and I would be sharing finances, or I would be in some way supported by my boyfriend by the fact of us moving in together. If I could move in together with him and not lose my benefits, we'd be doing so. Did the boyfriend know about all this going into this relationship, or has he known about it? Have you ever talked about how important it is for you to keep these payments? I know there's going to be a lot of comments on this story from a certain part of YouTube that are very adamant about how these laws are unfair to men, and they're going to be taking that route. But we're talking about this woman here. And I think this woman and this ex-husband are very used to this idea of their arrangement of being on the health insurance and the alimony. If this woman communicated with the new boyfriend about how she felt about it, maybe this boyfriend wouldn't be so upset when she rejected this proposal. I don't think anything would change if they got married either. Maybe they just need to be a little more cautious about protection against spicy time. What do you think? Story 2. Tenant asking landlord, me, to be more professional. I'm a small-time landlord with just 4 tenants. Earlier this year, I had 2 sisters that didn't respond to my request to add the gal's husband to the lease, though he was living with them. Not a big deal, but did I mention the pit bull they also brought home without permission? I do allow pets, and had previously approved their other dog. I asked nicely in person and by email in the months leading up to the malicious compliance. They also did not respond when I asked if they were happy there and wanted to renew their lease the following year. I asked again, then I emailed them notice that I would start showing the unit 2 days later. I try to be a nice landlord, I do. They had a newborn as well, so I scheduled all of the showings within a 2-hour window on the same night so I could be in their space as little as possible. Also, because they had not responded, and it was now serious crunch time for getting another tenant, and my spouse worked all the following 2 weeks during evening showing hours, I had the delightful inconvenience of bringing my 2- and 6-year-old children with me to the showings. Because I'm not a corporation. I'm a small-time family landlord with kids. Try to imagine how difficult it is to conduct business meetings with 2 kids, right? Then imagine staggering showings every 15 minutes with prospective tenants who are also bringing their own kids. Just to further clutter your imagination, this is an 800-square-foot 2-bedroom apartment with a cozy entryway. So I arrive with my 2 kids to find that my tenants are still at home along with the husband, the newborn, and the other sister's boyfriend. So that's 7 people in a kitchen already. Then the first prospective tenants start arriving. Husbands, wives with kids, and some showing up early, so there's 2 sets of them. That's 14 people in a small kitchen. And I'm a mom. I have magical powers. So I'm holding my toddler, my daughter is safely under the dining table coloring, and I'm chatting with the prospective tenants and directing traffic while my actual tenants are preparing to depart. If you didn't know this already, it's common practice in the U.S. to leave the premises during real estate or apartment showings. This was their first apartment, so I actually emailed them ahead of time to let them know what is generally expected at showings, e.g., a relatively tidy apartment and that they can leave for their own convenience. They do eventually leave, after the boyfriend tells a prospective tenant that he, in fact, also lives there. And I carry on with an exhaustive scheduling of showings, and have my new tenants all picked out and the lease signed by the next day. Awesome, right? The next night, I get a voicemail from the husband, who is not my tenant. I saved it and just listened to it again because it still gives me the same delightful shiver of malicious compliance. In his voicemail, he told me how awful it was that my children touched his infant's things. They didn't, because I keep my kids entertained with magical mommy toys. But prospective tenants also brought children, and how they had to sterilize everything to keep their infant from being sick, and how inconvenient it was to have showings with only 2 days' notice, and how very unprofessional I was to bring my children and asked if I could just be more professional in the future. You can hear it, can't you? The deep shiver of malicious compliance vibrating through my offended being. The next morning, I started issuing professional lease violation notices. One for the extra residents in the building, hubby and boyfriend, one for the extra dog, and a few additional ones for building concerns I noted during the showings. They ignored the violation notice, which I sent by certified mail and, thoughtfully, also by email. I decided to be even more professional 30 days later and issue a 5-day notice to vacate. Did I mention that their lease was due to end just a few weeks later? But it would be unprofessional of me to let these violations slide until then. 3 days later, they'd magically sent me all the information I'd requested, removed the other dog, licensed the first dog, and got the required pet insurance. They moved out on their lease termination date and skipped out on their last electric bill and left the unit in damaged conditions. Despite my professional security deposit disposition statement and request for payment, they ignored those notices until I stated I would proceed to small claims court by X date for the total due beyond their security deposit. On X date, they replied stating they didn't think it was fair that they should have to cover damages to the unit or pay any more money toward their utility bill. Yep. 2 months later, they were in the lobby of the courthouse, sitting across from each other on uncomfortable waiting room benches. They're laughing among themselves about how they're going to get their full security deposit back. And I'm quietly reviewing my presentation notes to the judge and my sizable stack of evidence, photographs, videos. This was my first time in court, but I wasn't laughing. I was preparing. 1 hour later, we're back in the lobby, and their mom is trying to write me a check for the full amount of the judgment. She doesn't have a pen. Her kids don't have a pen. I, however, have a pen. I cheerfully offer the pen. She writes the check and hands it to me, and wait, I hold out my hand again. Got my pen back, too. I was so proud of myself for not saying any of the sassy things in my head at that moment. You know why? Because I was being professional, as I'd been from the moment he'd left that voicemail. There is a lot of sentiment against landlords these days, and this seems to be one of the incidences where the landlord was trying to do the right thing and be easygoing up until this voicemail. They were really taking advantage of the sort of anti-landlord or rental sentiment at this point. They just thought that they were going to have things go their way. But I really don't feel bad for the landlord at all. I'm glad that the landlord took all the steps that they took. And these other people, they left the place in damaged. They left it damaged. They deserved what they got, as far as I'm concerned. What do you think? Story 1. Am I the a-hole for disabling my boyfriend's access to my Peloton account when he wasn't talking to me? So, my boyfriend has had a rough 2020 because he loves to travel, and he got laid off from his job at a very big commercial airline that allowed him to travel the world for free. Learning his uncle was diagnosed with cancer in December just added insult to injury. He went into a pretty deep depression and gained a considerable amount of weight, and I've tried to be supportive by letting him use all of my memberships for free so he can save money while he looks for a job. I've been cooking healthy meals, and I gave him access to my Peloton account so he could do his own workouts from home while I'm at work. We got into a really big argument last week because I fell asleep during a movie. This is his pet peeve, and there have been times in the past where he has stormed out of my place because I've fallen asleep during movies or shows he suggested. When we were in therapy at one point, he said when I fell asleep, it makes him feel like I'm disengaged, and I totally respected that and promised I would inform him when I was either too tired to watch something or was getting sleepy while we were watching something. Last weekend, he suggested we watch a documentary, and 15 minutes into the documentary, he asked me if I was falling asleep, and I said I was getting sleepy, but I wasn't sleeping. 2 minutes later, he insisted that I was sleeping. He said he could hear me breathing loudly, and when I denied it, he accused me of lying about falling asleep. He said the problem wasn't that I was sleeping, it was that I was lying about it. I told him I was tired and didn't want to deal with this tantrum, and we called it a night. When I texted him the following morning, I didn't hear back from him, so I started getting worried. I saw that he had accessed my Peloton account less than an hour before and figured maybe he's still upset and he just needs some space. But he didn't call or text me back that day for 5 days and continued to use my account each of those 5 days. When I still haven't heard a word from him after 5 days, I disabled his access to my account. He accused me of being emotionally abusive when I did that. According to him, I should have known he's not in a good place right now and might need some space. He claimed to be doing some 14-day mind-body meditation challenge that I interfered with. I felt bad, but I told him he could have communicated that to me, but since he chose to ghost me instead, I had no way of knowing. Am I the a-hole? I'd say you're both being the a-hole. You're both being kind of petty. I think he was overreacting. The girl was saying she was sleepy, and he should have taken that. He should have taken that to heart. And she could see that he was using the Peloton account. Did it cost her any more to have him on it? Maybe he just did need a little more space than maybe 5 days. Did you text any warning that you were going to disable the account if you didn't talk? Maybe there's that too. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for bringing my entire family to the restaurant where my girlfriend was working as a server in order to meet her? I, 24 male, have been dating my girlfriend, 26 female, for several months. She works as a server at a local popular restaurant. My family has been here for a few weeks now. I have 2 older sisters, 31 and 27, as well as 3 nieces and mother and father who are both in their late 50s. My girlfriend doesn't have a good relationship with her own parents and has expressed envy over me having a good relationship with mine. I've asked her a few times to come with me to meet my family, but she's always had an excuse why she couldn't. So anyway, last weekend, I brought my whole family, my parents as well as my sisters and their husbands and their kids, to her restaurant. I requested a table in her section. When she saw us, I could tell that she was taken aback, but she did her job well, and even took the time to talk to us all and get to know my parents, sisters, brothers-in-law, and nieces as well as she could while still doing her job and taking care of her other customers. Upon leaving, my entire family expressed that they really liked her, that I was lucky, and that they were glad to have met her. They also left her a huge tip. I thought the whole thing was fine. However, after she got off her shift, my girlfriend texted me and said, "Thanks a lot, you jerkwad." I called her and she went off on me about how I shouldn't have blindsided her by bringing my whole family and how she should have the chance to meet my family on her terms. I responded that she didn't seem to want to meet my family whenever I brought it up, so that if it were to ever happen, this was the way I'd figure it out. But she said that what I did was wrong and that she had to give my family special attention at the expense of her other tables, which I think wasn't true. Maybe I shouldn't have sprung my whole family on her in the way I did. But it went well, and I'm kind of annoyed that she can't see that. No, you are the a-hole. You were trying to put pressure on her to meet the family. If you had asked if there's a reason why she doesn't want to meet the family, and she doesn't give you an answer yet, still give her the space. You went to her place of work, and she handled it beautifully. If she was having any issues with nervousness or having to juggle meeting this family while still working her job, you are definitely the a-hole. You should have just let it go. Let her approach meeting the family in her time. Story 2. You've been randomly selected. This happened about 3 years ago while going through an airport in the U.S. I walked through the metal detector. Something must have beeped and they needed to pat me down. After a thorough pat-down, I put my shoes on and started to walk over to grab my bag. A TSA agent stops me and says, You've been randomly selected. Please step into the body scanner. I was polite, but said that I really didn't want to get into the body scanner and asked if there was another way. The agent said that I could get a pat down. I said, well, I just got a pat down, so they angrily told me to pick an option. So I took 2 steps backwards to the woman who had patted me down 30 seconds ago and spread him. Again. While she was patting me down, I asked her if she found anything new. She stared daggers at me, but let me go. If these people don't realize the ridiculousness of what they're saying, then just go with it. You were polite, definitely, very good. You weren't screaming and everything, or you weren't just being bossy or anything like that. Is there another way? Well, you could get a pat down, like the one I just got? Yeah, if they feel like they need to pat you down again for some reason, and you know nothing's changed, just do it. It's ridiculous. You just gotta go with it at this point. Story 3. Sorry, you revoked my overtime privileges yesterday. This was several years ago when I worked at a redacted big name coffee shop. My shift was 5 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., and often around 1 p.m., giant groups of kids on school field trips would come through the area. This was a coffee shop located in a major California city, very close to a bunch of museums. I had been working a lot of overtime because of it, to help my coworkers through the rush. I got written up by my supervisor for doing too many overtime shifts without approval. I was explicitly informed to not work overtime again. I had lost overtime privileges until the corporation deemed I could have them again. And working overtime again prior to that would result in further disciplinary action. The day after I was written up, right as my shift ended, 3 big buses full of kids unloaded and filled the shop. At 1:30 p.m. on the dot, my watch alarm went off and I went to go clock out. The store manager who wrote to me the day prior said, "Wait, where are you going?" I reminded her that I'd lost my overtime privileges, clocked out, retrieved the shift drink I'd made for myself right before the rush, and left. The next day, I was informed my overtime privileges had been reinstated. That's all you can do. It was a power play, basically. You're costing this company money, I guess. At that point, just paying for overtime for one person is probably just nickel-diming it. But there's no better way to prove your worth than having your overtime privileges revoked and then facing something like this coming up. Get everything in writing. Cover yourself when you're working so you don't find yourself getting accused of stuff by management that you didn't do. Story 4. Landlord tried to exploit me for free labor. I'm renting a little house out past the suburbs of the city I'm currently working in. It's a little old and the appliances are a bit dated, but it was much cheaper than a 2-bedroom apartment downtown, and I move around every couple of years for work. My landlord lives out of state and doesn't have anyone local, so for the past year and a half, I haven't talked to anyone. Just pay my rent on time and keep doing my thing. About 4 months ago, plumbing issues started popping up, and 2 major appliances decided to give up the ghost. I notified my landlord via email and written letter. I rent a lot and have learned to abide by the exact wording in a lease. After several follow-up emails and phone calls, a local handyman showed up to look at everything and provide a quote. After receiving the quote for parts plus labor, the landlord told me flat out that they will not be paying for the repairs. They said that since I am an engineer, they would allow me to purchase parts, install them, and then deduct the cost of the repairs from my rent payment. They said it was either this or learn to make do. I was not super thrilled at this response. I replied back to them saying if they were willing to deduct my time and cost of the parts from my rent, that I would get started immediately. Thank you very much. They were thrilled to hear it and asked me to send receipts for their records when everything is finished. Great. Now to put together all the pieces and get to work. The first step was to file for an LLC with my current state. Next, I set up some cameras and borrowed a GoPro from one of my hiking mates. I was able to document all the repair process, from me watching YouTube videos of how to do things to me making multiple runs to the parts store to get that piece I didn't know I needed. Here's the kicker. At my day job, I make over $50 an hour. That is what my time is valued at. The final bill for everything has worked out to be about 12% higher than the quoted cost, and the landlord is very upset. But my lawyer, added to the email chain, has kept them very civil. Again, document everything. This person had to have gotten some sort of written statement that, yes, this was fine to add your labor costs to everything. Just completely very well done. Especially the kicker at the end, to make sure the lawyer is in on this and make sure everything's on the up and up. Brilliantly done.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 1. My cancer survivor wife wanted a hall pass. I'm at a loss as to what to do with my 54 male wife's 51 female request. My wife and I have been married since 2001 and together since 1999. She is the most intelligent, thoughtful, caring, loyal person I know, and I have always thought of myself as fortunate to have met and married her. She is, even today, aesthetically beautiful, and men have told her this throughout our marriage. She has always shot them down. Earlier this year, she was diagnosed with uterine cancer, stage 1, and had a full hysterectomy. I was never concerned about the cancer. It was diagnosed early, dealt with quickly, and she made a full recovery. I took time off work to look after her after the surgery, and all seemed well. There were some to-be-expected emotional instances on her part, and although I'm not an emotional person, we dealt with them together. After her recovery, she was insistent that we start living life to the fullest, and took a 10-day trip to Europe, followed by a trip to Belize. We also have a trip to the UK and Spain/Portugal later this year. I'm fine with these things. Building memories and crossing bucket list adventures off of her and our list. I also understand that these are a result of feeling fragile on her part. She also took up yoga, swimming, and healthy cooking classes. I am fully on board. Until last week. Last week, she came home from work and told me she wanted a hall pass, a one-time opportunity for her to have intimacy with someone else besides me. She said that since her cancer diagnosis, her outlook on life has changed, and she doesn't want to be handcuffed from doing things she wants to do. She explained that there is this guy at her work that she has always had some attraction to. He is leaving the company and she will never see him again, so this is the perfect opportunity to sleep with someone else. She said that I could say no, of course, but that she would be mad/disappointed at me for an indeterminate amount of time, and that it would be confirmation of my male toxicity and insecurity. I don't consider myself to be toxic, and if not wanting your wife of 20+ years to have intimacy with someone else is insecure, then I guess I'm insecure. I told her that I appreciated her talking to me about this, but approval via coercion is not approval. I also said that I do not appreciate her language in describing my, as of yet, unknown reaction to this very large issue that could affect the rest of our marriage and life. When I got up in the morning, she basically said that she was sorry for putting such a large decision solely on my shoulders, and that to help, she was taking the decision away from me. She booked a hotel near where her coworkers are having a party/send-off for this guy, and she would spend the night there, with him, and hoped that I would be here when she got back. That she would answer any questions I have about the night after it happened, but not before. She will not tell me who he is or anything about him because she knows me too well and that I will dwell and obsess over him, and that would make it too real for me, which is pretty accurate. Her point of view is that the less I know, the better, which contradicts the offer to tell me anything I want to know after it happened. I think she knows I don't want to know or ask anything, or she'll simply not tell me. Part of me thinks at least she's been honest with me, and she has been through a lot since finding out she had cancer, so maybe I should just let it happen. I certainly have no concept of what she went through, so I can't dismiss how this affected her mental state or outlook on life. Part of me wants to put my foot down and say this is not going to happen and deal with those consequences when they happen. Her BFF called me callous for even suggesting that I wouldn't let it happen, because I have no idea what she went through. I find it hard to believe that she's okay with the possibility of throwing away 20-plus years of marriage over some guy that she had no relationship with outside of work, and that I should just call her bluff. Maybe she thinks similarly that I won't throw away the marriage because of one encounter. I just don't know what to do. I empathize with her, and then an instant later I'm angry with her. Part of me wants to know who this guy is. What does he look like? What has he got that's so enthralling for her? Is he just a safe option? Is he married? Does his wife know? Would I be a callous butthole for saying no? What can I do besides walking away? That is a really difficult one. But she is really taking everything away from him. And she has gone through a lot. She has gone through having a physical part of her removed, and she is living life to the fullest. But this man has supported her throughout all of this. Supported her through the recovery, supported her through any emotions she's encountering. She is totally taking away what he's gone through as well. She's willing to make this choice, but she is probably thinking there's not going to be any consequences for this. This is going to change. The relationship is going to change from this moment on because of this, because she is choosing this. She thinks it's just a thing that she can do and move on. It's not. Story 2. Today I fracked up by paying my wife for intimacy. Obligatory, this happened about 5 hours ago, but I saw the email 30 minutes ago while taking a dump and finally piecing the puzzle together. We've been waiting for our debit cards for 2 weeks. We started a new bank account and had all of our money go into it. Besides a little bit, we got put on a prepay card. Turns out this online bank does not send out your debit card until you make a deposit. Hit a week ago. I'm sure it said that somewhere, so that's on us. Anyway, we've been spreading the money we had super thin, and we finally reached a point that we're going to try Venmo or PayPal again. We tried them earlier in the week, so it would not connect to the other card for some reason. My wife gets everything set up while I'm playing PS4, hits transfer, and sends a test for $50. It worked. So this is where I come in. I said you should have sent more. So I take the phone from her and send $225 on Venmo and jokingly write, "Intimacy?" in the message. Error. Cannot process this transaction. Next, I get an email saying my account has violated terms of service, and it's frozen. Ooh, I think that was something that possibly should have been a little more detailed in that. Who knew that that word is going to trigger some sort of violation in that? I mean, it's your money, and you're transferring it however you want. Sure, discretion is the better part of valor, but just that word shouldn't really be the reason that your account is frozen like that. I don't think they messed up. I think it's a little bit of an invasion of privacy, to be honest. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for bringing my own dinner to a wedding? Okay, Okay, I know how it sounds. Please let me explain. I, 26 female, have a ton of medical issues, including some that create major dietary restrictions. Real dietary restrictions, not some random fad diet that has false medical benefits. My cousin, Kay, had her wedding a couple weeks ago, and they did not have any menu items that I would be able to eat except a couple of the appetizers. Even then, I'm a little uncomfortable because they chose buffet style for the side dishes, and catering creates a lot of opportunity for cross-contamination. I would never expect someone to change or add to their wedding menu on my behalf, so I messaged her as soon as we had received the menu and just let her know that I would be unable to dine with them at the reception because of the dietary stuff, and let her know that I would come back after I was able to eat. I understand what it was like leading up to a wedding, and I received no response to my message. Though it was on Facebook, and I knew she'd opened it, I decided I would just put together a little lunchbox and leave it in the car so when I started to get hungry, I could just go grab a snack and come back in. Well, the reception came, and all was well. Then dinner time came, and Kate came up to me and asked why I was leaving the venue. I told her that I had just had to get some food in my belly and that I would be right back to finish celebrating. She got an appalled look on her face and asked why I would bring food to a wedding I knew would have some of the best. I let her know about the restrictions and reminded her about the message. She said, "I just figured you were being dramatic and someone in the family would get you under control." Guess nobody could. My jaw hit the floor. I wish that my restrictions could be casually broken, but unfortunately, I get quite ill if I break the food boundary. It's well known within my family that this is true. I've ruined a holiday or two by accidentally eating contaminated food. Anyway, I really didn't know how to respond, so I just walked out to the car and had my food with the company of the car radio. I am the queen of being hangry, so I hoped that getting fed would help me get a better grip on the situation, but I was still shaky and mad. I came back prepared to sit quietly and get through the rest of the night without too much more to say, but my aunt and uncle came to the table and told me how much I hurt Kay's feelings by bringing my own food. I explained, although I still feel a certain sort of way about having to explain, the restrictions again, and told them I tried to be as polite as humanly possible by reaching out beforehand and leaving the snacks out of sight of the reception guests. They told me it gave the whole wedding a bad look, and if it was really that big of a deal, then I needed to eat beforehand. Nobody else has weighed in, and at this point, I really don't know if I was in the wrong. Am I the a-hole? I've got to be honest. I really thought when I read the title of this story, it was just going to be someone trying to explain themselves by having like a whole plate of food placed on the table at the dinner reception. She was not the a-hole at all. She kept the food out of the way. Maybe she did eat beforehand, but probably still needed a snack. And she warned someone ahead of time, that warned the bride ahead of time that this was going to be an issue. The cousin's inability to respond and assuming that it was going to go her way or something like that is just on her. Definitely not the a-hole. She had every opportunity to make this a non-issue. Really, I don't think anyone noticed that she stepped out, probably. It's just these people that are making a fuss over it.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.